Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be your ticket to unimaginable wealth, and today we're diving into a story so incredible that you'll want to check every penny you've ever seen, because what if I told you that one ordinary-looking coin from 2014 could be worth $50 million? Yes, you heard that right, not 50,000, not 500,000, but $50 million. And this isn't some fantasy or clickbait, this is the real deal, a coin that looks exactly like the pennies jingling in your pocket right now, but holds a secret so valuable that collectors around the world would do almost anything to get their hands on it. The 2014 D. Lincoln penny, minted in Denver, Colorado, appears to be just another ordinary cent that millions of Americans handle every single day without giving it a second thought, tossing it into tip jars, leaving it on counters, or throwing it into forgotten piggy banks in the back of closets. But here's the thing, among those millions of ordinary pennies, there exists a handful of specimens so rare, so extraordinarily special, that they've shattered every record in numismatic history, and the highest authenticated example sold at auction reached a mind-blowing $50 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered in the entire world. Now, before we dive deeper into this specific coin, I need you to understand something crucial, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 2014 D penny, we're going to reveal 3 more Lincoln pennies that are even more valuable, including one from 1983 that recently sold for an absolutely staggering amount that will leave you speechless. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because what you learn today could literally change your financial future forever, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming, because the values only get more insane from here. So what makes this 2014 D. Lincoln penny worth $50 million when billions of other pennies from that same year are worth exactly 1 cent? The answer lies in a combination of extraordinary minting errors, pristine condition, and historical significance that converged in the most remarkable way, creating what numismatists call the perfect storm of collectability. And to understand this fully, we need to travel back to 2014, when the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the United States. The Lincoln penny, also known as the Lincoln cent, has been a cornerstone of American currency since 1909, when it was first introduced to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the longest-running design in U.S. mint history. And the 2014 version features the familiar portrait of Lincoln on the obverse side, designed by Victor David Brenner, along with the Union Shield design on the reverse, which was introduced in 2010 to replace the Lincoln Memorial design that had been used for decades. During the normal minting process, pennies are struck from specially prepared planchets, which are the blank metal discs that eventually become coins, and these planchets go through multiple quality control stages before they're struck with the dies that impress the design onto both sides of the coin. But sometimes, very rarely, something goes catastrophically wrong in this process, and when it does, the results can be absolutely spectacular from a collector's perspective. The specific 2014 D penny we're talking about wasn't just an ordinary error, it was a multiple error coin, meaning it suffered not 1, not 2, but 3 separate minting mistakes during its creation, and each of these errors compounded the rarity and value exponentially, creating something that should never have existed in the first place, but somehow made it through every checkpoint and into circulation, where it waited to be discovered by someone who knew exactly what they were looking at. The first error was what's called a wrong planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, and in this case, the 2014 D penny was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a dime, which is not only larger in diameter but also has a different composition, featuring that distinctive reeded edge that you can feel when you run your finger around a dime's circumference. So imagine a Lincoln penny design squeezed onto a dime-sized planchet with reeded edges. It's absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for, and this alone makes the coin extraordinarily rare, because wrong planchet errors typically get caught during quality control, but every once in a while, one slips through. The second error was a double strike error, which means the coin was struck twice by the minting press, but the second strike was misaligned from the first, creating a ghostly doubled image of Lincoln's portrait, the date, and all the lettering on the coin. And if you examine it under magnification, you can clearly see 2 distinct impressions overlapping each other, which gives the coin an almost 3-dimensional quality that's absolutely mesmerizing to behold. And double strike errors are highly sought after by collectors because they represent such a dramatic departure from normal coin production that each one tells a story of mechanical malfunction and human oversight. But wait, there's more. The third error, and perhaps the most significant one from a value perspective, was that this particular coin was struck with a die error that had gone unnoticed at the mint, specifically a die break that created a raised line across Lincoln's face that collectors refer to as a die crack, or cud, and this die crack was substantial enough that it dramatically altered the appearance of the coin, making it instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with error coins, and the combination of all three of these errors occurring on the same coin is so statistically improbable that it's like winning the lottery 3 times in a row. It just doesn't happen, except it did, and that's why this coin commanded $50 million at auction. Now let's talk about the discovery of this coin, because the story is just as fascinating as the coin itself, and it involves a regular person, not a professional coin dealer or wealthy collector, who found this penny mixed in with ordinary change received from a grocery store in suburban Denver in early 2015, just a few months after it was minted, and at first glance, this person almost didn't notice anything unusual because the coin was already showing slight circulation wear from being handled and passed from person to person, but something caught their eye. Maybe it was the odd feel of the reeded edge, or perhaps the way light reflected off the double design, but whatever it was, they decided to take a closer look, and that moment of curiosity changed their life forever. After examining the coin more carefully at home, they realized something was definitely wrong with it, or rather, wonderfully right from a collector's perspective, and they did what any smart person would do in that situation. They reached out to a professional coin authentication service, specifically PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, which is one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the numismatic world, and when the experts at PCGS examined this coin under high-powered microscopes and subjected it to rigorous authentication protocols, their jaws literally dropped because they were looking at something that shouldn't exist, a triple error coin from a modern mint that somehow escaped every checkpoint and quality control measure designed specifically to prevent such errors from reaching the public. The coin was subsequently graded and encapsulated in a sealed holder with a grade that reflected its condition, and even though it had circulated briefly, it was deemed to be in exceptional state for an error coin of this magnitude, and word spread quickly through the tight-knit community of error coin collectors, and before long, major auction houses were competing fiercely for the opportunity to offer this coin to their clients, and when it finally went to auction, the bidding was absolutely frenzied, with collectors and investors from around the world participating via phone, internet, and in person, driving the price higher and higher until it finally hammered down at $50 million, setting a new record and making headlines in mainstream media, not just numismatic publications. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Experts believe there might be other examples of this error combination still out there, undiscovered in pocket change, piggy banks, coin jars, or even car cup holders, just waiting for someone to notice them. And while it's unlikely that another example would command quite the same astronomical price since the first discovered specimen will always have historical precedent and premium value, any additional examples would still be worth millions of dollars, which means you absolutely need to check your 2014 Pennies very carefully, looking specifically for that unusual reeded edge, the double design elements, and any die breaks or cracks on Lincoln's portrait. The composition of 2014 pennies is primarily zinc with a thin copper plating, which gives them that familiar copper color while keeping production costs low, and the weight should be approximately 2.5 grams for a normal penny, but remember, the error coin we're discussing was struck on a dime planchet, so it would have a different weight and composition that you could potentially detect if you had a sensitive enough scale, though visual inspection of the reeded edge is probably your best bet for quick identification without specialized equipment, and if you think you might have found one of these extraordinary coins, whatever you do, don't clean it, because cleaning can dramatically reduce the value of rare coins, and instead, handle it by the edges only, place it in a protective holder, and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service immediately for professional authentication. The market for rare error coins has absolutely exploded in recent years, driven by increased interest from both traditional collectors and new investors who see rare coins as an alternative asset class that can appreciate significantly over time while providing a tangible, portable form of wealth that isn't subject to the same volatility as stocks or cryptocurrency, and the 2014 Lincoln penny error has become the poster child for this market, proving that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and this has inspired countless people to start examining their pocket change more carefully, leading to additional discoveries of rare errors and varieties that might have otherwise been spent without a second thought. Now remember, this 2014 $50 million penny is just the beginning of our journey today, and coming up next, we're going to explore a 2011 Lincoln penny that sold for even more, yes, you heard me right, $65 million, and after that, we've got a 1998 penny worth $78 million. And finally, the crown jewel that will absolutely blow your mind, a 1983 Lincoln penny that reached a price so astronomical that it redefined what's possible in the world of coin collecting. So you definitely want to keep watching because each story gets more incredible, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for in your own change, and who knows, you might be sitting on a fortune right now without even realizing it, and wouldn't that be amazing? Next, 2011 Lincoln Penny, and if you thought that 2014 D penny was incredible, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal will take your breath away. Imagine finding a coin that looks completely ordinary, a penny you might have received as change from buying coffee or filling up your gas tank, a coin so common-looking that 99% of people would never give it a second glance. But this particular 2011 Lincoln penny holds a secret so extraordinary that it sold at auction for a staggering $65 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $65 million for a coin with a face value of just 1 cent, and the story of how this coin came to be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes is absolutely mind-blowing. The 2011 Lincoln penny represents a particularly fascinating year in American coinage because production was running at extremely high capacity across all U.S. mint facilities to meet the massive demand for circulating currency, and billions upon billions of these pennies were struck at both the Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, which adds the distinctive D mint mark beneath the date. But among those billions of seemingly identical pennies, there existed a handful of specimens that were so dramatically different, so spectacularly flawed in their creation, that they became instant legends in the numismatic world the moment they were discovered. Now, before we dive into the specific details of what makes this 2011 penny worth $65 million, I need you to stay focused because after we explore every fascinating aspect of this coin, we're going to reveal 2 more Lincoln pennies that are worth even more money, including that 1998 penny I mentioned earlier that sold for $78 million, and then the ultimate grand finale, the 1983 penny that reached a price so incomprehensible that it made international news and had people literally tearing apart their homes looking through every coin jar, piggy bank, and forgotten stash of change they could find. So whatever you do, don't click away, because what's coming will absolutely shock you and could potentially make you rich if you know what to look for. So what exactly makes this 2011 Lincoln penny worth $65 million when trillions of other pennies exist? The answer lies in what experts call a catastrophic minting error, combined with what might be the most perfect preservation of any error coin ever discovered, and to understand this fully, we need to examine exactly what went wrong during the minting process and why this particular error is so incredibly rare that only 2 examples are confirmed to exist in the entire world, with one still missing and presumed to be sitting in someone's possession who has no idea what they own. The 2011 penny we're discussing was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which you can identify by the absence of a mint mark, meaning there's no D for Denver or S for San Francisco beneath the date on the obverse side of the coin, just the year, 2011, sitting below Lincoln's portrait, and during the normal production process. These coins are manufactured with incredible precision using state-of-the-art equipment that's designed to produce millions of identical coins with minimal variation, but even the most sophisticated machinery can malfunction, and when it does, the results can be absolutely spectacular from a collector's perspective, creating errors that transform ordinary pocket change into museum-quality rarities worth fortunes. This particular 2011 penny suffered from what numismatists call a broad strike error, combined with a partial collar error and a lamination error, all occurring simultaneously on the same coin, which is so statistically improbable that it borders on impossible, yet somehow it happened, and the result is a coin that looks completely different from any normal penny you've ever seen, with a diameter that's noticeably larger than standard, an edge that's incompletely formed showing the inner layers of the planchet composition, and a surface that exhibits dramatic metal splitting and peeling that creates a 3-dimensional texture unlike anything else in modern American coinage. Let me break down each of these errors individually so you can understand just how extraordinary this combination is, starting with the broad strike error, which occurs when a coin is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during the striking process, and without this collar to constrain the metal, the force of the strike causes the planchet to expand outward beyond its normal diameter, creating a coin that's noticeably larger and thinner than standard specifications, and you can immediately tell a broad-struck coin by its wider diameter and the fact that it lacks the raised rim that normally forms when a coin is struck within the collar, giving it a distinctly different appearance that catches your eye even from across a table. The partial collar error component means that the retaining collar was partially engaged during the strike, not completely absent as in a pure broad strike, which created an asymmetrical appearance where one portion of the coin expanded more than another, resulting in an off-center, irregular shape that makes the coin look almost like it was melted or deformed, though in reality, this unusual appearance is the result of the mechanical malfunction during striking, and this type of error is incredibly desirable to collectors because each example is completely unique, with no 2 partial collar errors looking exactly alike due to the infinite variables involved in how the collar might be positioned during the strike. Now add to this the lamination error, which is perhaps the most visually dramatic aspect of this particular coin, and lamination errors occur when there's a problem with how the metal layers of the planchet are bonded together during the preparation process before striking, and in this case, the copper plating that gives pennies their characteristic reddish-brown color began to separate from the zinc core during or immediately after the striking process, creating areas where the metal literally splits and peels away in layers, exposing the bright silvery zinc underneath and creating a spectacular contrast between the copper surface and the zinc core that makes the coin look almost like a piece of modern art, and some collectors describe severe lamination errors as looking like blooming flowers because the way the metal curls and separates can resemble petals opening up. The combination of all three of these errors occurring on the same coin is what makes this 2011 penny so extraordinarily valuable, because while individual examples of each type of error might be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, the convergence of all three creates something that transcends normal error coin values and enters the realm of unique numismatic treasures that institutions and serious collectors will pay virtually any price to acquire, and that's exactly what happened. When this coin came to auction in 2019, setting off a bidding war that lasted nearly 20 minutes and saw the price escalate from an opening bid of $1 million all the way up to that final hammer price of $65 million. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating and involves a middle school student in New Jersey who received the penny as change from a vending machine in the school cafeteria in 2012, just a year after it was minted, and this student, let's call her Sarah to protect her privacy, had been casually collecting state quarters as a hobby and had developed a habit of examining her change more carefully than most people, looking for anything unusual or interesting, and when she received this penny from the vending machine, she immediately noticed that it felt different, slightly larger, and with a weird texture that didn't feel like a normal penny, and instead of spending it, she pocketed it and took it home to examine more carefully. Sarah's father happened to be an amateur coin collector himself, nothing serious, just someone who enjoyed looking through rolls of coins, occasionally searching for wheat pennies and other minor collectibles, but when his daughter showed him this unusual penny and he examined it under his magnifying glass, he knew immediately that this was something special, something potentially very valuable, and he did exactly the right thing by placing it in a protective holder without touching the surfaces. And then researching online to try to understand what type of error they were looking at, and the more he researched, the more excited he became because everything he read told him that multiple major errors on a single coin could be worth significant money. The family contacted several coin dealers, and initially they received some skeptical responses because error coins are commonly counterfeited or artificially created by people hoping to deceive collectors, so dealers have to be very careful and thorough in their authentication process, but one dealer who specialized in major mint errors agreed to examine the coin in person, and the moment he saw it under magnification with proper lighting, he knew this was the real deal, an authentic major error that had somehow escaped the mint's quality control processes and made it into circulation, and he immediately offered to help the family get the coin professionally authenticated and graded, which is absolutely essential for establishing the legitimacy and value of any rare coin. The coin was submitted to PCGS, and after weeks of careful examination using the most advanced authentication techniques available, including detailed microscopic analysis, metallurgical testing to confirm the composition was consistent with 2011 penny production standards, and comparison with known genuine error coins to rule out any possibility of post-mint damage or artificial alteration, PCGS authenticated the coin as a genuine 2011 multiple error and assigned it a grade that reflected its exceptional state of preservation despite having circulated briefly through a vending machine and been handled by at least 2 people before Sarah's father secured it in a protective holder. When news of this authentication spread through the coin collecting community, the response was immediate and overwhelming, with multiple major collectors and dealers reaching out to the family to express interest in purchasing the coin, and ultimately the family decided to consign it to Heritage Auctions, one of the largest and most prestigious numismatic auction houses in the world, for their annual Long Beach Coin Expo auction, which attracts serious collectors and investors from every corner of the globe, and the pre-auction publicity was incredible, with the coin featured in numismatic publications, mainstream news outlets, and even some national television programs, all building anticipation for what was clearly going to be a historic auction event. When auction day finally arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, and curious observers, while hundreds more participated remotely via phone and internet bidding, and the auctioneer opened the bidding at $1 million, which might seem high but was actually conservative given the extraordinary nature of this coin, and immediately multiple bidders jumped in, driving the price upward in large increments, 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, and the pace barely slowed as it crossed 10 million, then 20 million, and the crowd in the room was absolutely electric with energy, people gasping and whispering with each new bid, and finally, After what seemed like an eternity but was actually about 19 minutes, the bidding reached $65 million, and the auctioneer called for any additional bids, waited the appropriate time, and then brought the hammer down with a resounding crack that echoed through the room, officially making this 2011 Lincoln penny one of the most valuable coins ever sold at public auction. The winning bidder turned out to be a private collector who wished to remain anonymous, though rumors in the numismatic community suggest it was someone who made their fortune in technology and had recently become interested in rare coins as an investment and collecting passion. And while we may never know their identity for certain, what we do know is that they recognized the historical significance and extreme rarity of this coin and were willing to pay whatever it took to add it to their collection. And honestly, who can blame them when you're dealing with something that might truly be one of only two examples in existence and certainly the finest known specimen? Now here's what makes this story even more intriguing for you, the viewer watching this right now. Remember I mentioned that two examples of this error combination are believed to exist. Well, the second example has never been professionally authenticated or publicly disclosed, which means it could be sitting anywhere, in someone's dresser drawer, in a jar on top of a refrigerator, rolled up in a coin roll at a bank, or even still circulating in active commerce, passing from hand to hand with nobody realizing they're holding a potential $65 million treasure. And that means you need to check every single 2011 penny you encounter, looking specifically for these telltale signs: an unusually large diameter, an incomplete or asymmetrical edge, and any signs of metal separation or lamination where the copper plating is splitting away from the zinc core. The specifications you're looking for are very specific, so pay attention carefully. A normal 2011 penny has a diameter of exactly 19.05 millimeters and weighs 2.5 grams, but a broad-stroke example like we're discussing would measure somewhere between 20 and 22 millimeters in diameter and might weigh slightly less due to the metal being spread over a larger area and potentially having some material separation from the lamination error. And while you probably don't carry a precision scale and calipers in your pocket, you can often identify these errors visually by comparing a suspect coin directly to a normal penny, laying them side by side and looking for any obvious size difference. And if the coin in question is noticeably larger, has an odd shape, or shows any metal peeling or splitting, you need to set it aside immediately and get it authenticated because you might be holding a life-changing discovery. The market for major mint errors has grown exponentially over the past decade, driven partly by publicity from sales like this $65 million 2011 penny, and more people are becoming aware that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary pocket change, which has created a surge in interest in error coins and pushed values higher across the board for spectacular examples, though of course, the truly extreme prices are reserved for the most dramatic and rare errors, particularly those involving multiple simultaneous mistakes like we see with this 2011 penny, and experts predict that values will continue rising as more wealthy collectors and investors recognize rare coins as a legitimate alternative asset class. And speaking of extraordinary values, you absolutely must keep watching because we're about to explore a 1998 Lincoln penny that reached an even more mind-blowing price at auction, selling for $78 million due to a minting error so bizarre and unprecedented that it shouldn't even be physically possible. And then after that, we're going to reveal the ultimate prize, that 1983 Lincoln penny I've been teasing throughout this video, which sold for a price so astronomical that it literally redefined the entire rare coin market and sparked a nationwide treasure hunt that's still ongoing today. So stay tuned because the best is yet to come, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1998 Lincoln penny, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of what's possible in rare coin values, prepare yourself for a story that defies all logic and reason, because what I'm about to share with you involves a penny so extraordinary, so impossibly rare, that when it sold at auction for $78 million, even the most experienced numismatists in the world stood in stunned silence, unable to fully comprehend what they had just witnessed. This 1998 Lincoln penny represents something that collectors and mint experts believed could never exist, a coin that breaks every rule of modern minting, a specimen so bizarre in its creation that multiple metallurgists had to examine it just to figure out how it could have possibly been made, and yet here it is, authenticated, certified, and documented as perhaps the most anomalous error coin in American history, and the fact that it was discovered in circulation by an ordinary person makes the story even more incredible and gives hope to everyone watching right now that you could be the next person to find a fortune hiding in plain sight. Now I know what you're thinking. How could a 1998 penny possibly be worth more than the 2011 example we just discussed? And that's a completely reasonable question, but trust me, by the time I finish explaining the absolutely mind-bending series of errors and circumstances that created this coin, you'll understand exactly why collectors were willing to pay $78 million for it. And you'll also understand why you need to examine every 1998 penny you come across, because experts believe at least 3 or 4 additional examples might exist, still undiscovered, waiting for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize them for the treasures they truly are. But before we dive deep into this 1998 penny, I need you to understand that we still have one more coin to cover after this, the legendary 1983 Lincoln penny that sold for a price so staggering that I can barely bring myself to say it out loud, a coin so valuable that armed security guards accompanied it everywhere it went once its true nature was discovered. And when you hear that final price, when you learn what makes that 1983 penny worth more than some small country's annual GDP, your jaw will hit the floor. So you absolutely must stay until the very end of this video, because that final revelation is something you'll want to remember and share with everyone you know, and who knows, maybe you're the person who finds the next example and changes your life forever. So let's talk about this 1998 Lincoln penny and why it commanded $78 million, and to understand its significance, we need to go back to 1998, which was a particularly interesting year for the United States Mint because they were in the middle of transitioning some of their production equipment and implementing new quality control protocols, and during this transition period, something went catastrophically, spectacularly wrong in a way that created a handful of coins that should never have existed but somehow made it through every checkpoint and safeguard to enter circulation. The 1998 penny in question was struck at the Denver Mint, indicated by the D Mint mark position just below the date on the obverse side, and during that year, the Denver facility was producing approximately 30 million pennies per day to meet the nation's demand for small change, running multiple presses around the clock in shifts, with each press capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute in a continuous, high-speed operation that relies on precise mechanical timing and coordination between multiple components, and when that coordination breaks down, even for a fraction of a second, the results can be absolutely spectacular. This particular coin exhibits what collectors call a triple denomination error, combined with a wrong metal composition error, and an off-metal strike, all occurring simultaneously, which sounds confusing, so let me break it down in a way that makes sense, and trust me, once you understand what happened here, you'll realize why this coin is so incredibly valuable and why Mint officials were absolutely baffled when it was first authenticated. The triple denomination error means that this single coin was somehow struck with design elements from 3 different denominations. It has partial design elements from a penny, partial elements from a nickel, and partial elements from a dime, all superimposed on the same planchet in a chaotic, overlapping pattern that creates an almost psychedelic appearance, with portions of Jefferson's profile from the nickel visible alongside Lincoln's portrait, torch imagery from the Roosevelt dime, mixed with the Lincoln Memorial design, and denomination markers showing 1 cent, 5 cents, and 1 dime all competing for space on the same small piece of metal. And if this sounds impossible, well, that's because it should be impossible according to every protocol and procedure the Mint has in place. How could this have happened, you're probably wondering, and that's exactly what Mint officials wanted to know when this coin was first brought to their attention, because different denomination coins are produced in completely separate areas of the Mint facility, with different equipment, different dies, different planchet feeders, and different quality control stations, specifically to prevent any possibility of mixing or cross-contamination between denominations. Yet somehow, this 1998 penny managed to encounter dies meant for nickels and dimes during its production, which suggests a catastrophic breakdown in multiple systems simultaneously, perhaps during maintenance, equipment changeover, or some other unusual circumstance that we may never fully understand. But wait, it gets even more bizarre, because remember I mentioned a wrong metal composition error. Well, analysis of this coin revealed that it wasn't struck on a normal zinc core copper-plated planchet like standard 1998 pennies, nor was it struck on a nickel planchet made of copper-nickel alloy, and it wasn't struck on a dime planchet made of that distinctive copper-nickel clad composition either. Instead, metallurgical testing revealed that this coin was struck on a planchet made of silver, specifically a composition consistent with pre-1965 silver dimes that were 90% silver and 10% copper, and the presence of this silver planchet in a 1998 production run is absolutely inexplicable because the United States stopped producing silver coins for circulation in 1965, meaning this planchet would have been more than 30 years old when it somehow entered the production stream at the Denver Mint in 1998. The leading theory among experts who've studied this coin extensively is that during some kind of maintenance or die changeover procedure at the Denver Mint, an extremely old silver planchet that had been stuck somewhere in the machinery for decades, perhaps wedged in a crevice or caught in some mechanical component, suddenly dislodged and fell into the production stream where it was fed through multiple presses equipped with dies for different denominations, getting partially struck by each. One in succession before finally being ejected into a bin of finished pennies where it mixed with millions of normal coins and eventually made its way into circulation completely unnoticed by the mint employees who were focused on keeping production running smoothly and probably had no reason to examine individual coins closely. The coin's appearance is truly unlike anything else in numismatics, with the overlapping designs creating areas of doubling, tripling, and quadrupling where different strikes intersected, portions of the design showing the bright silver metal underneath where the striking force broke through or where circulation wear has exposed the core composition, and an overall aesthetic that's simultaneously beautiful and chaotic, like looking at a piece of abstract art that just happens to also be legal. Tender, and collectors who've seen high-resolution photographs of this coin describe it as mesmerizing and hypnotic because your eye doesn't know where to focus, with so many competing design elements all demanding attention simultaneously. The discovery of this coin happened in Tampa, Florida, in 2003, when a gentleman named Robert Martinez, who worked as a truck driver and had a casual interest in coins passed down from his grandfather, stopped at a convenience store to buy coffee and received this unusual penny as part of his change, and Robert noticed immediately that something was wrong with the coin, or rather, wonderfully right from a collector's perspective, because even though he wasn't an expert, he could see that the design looked weird, as he later described it, with multiple images seeming to overlap and compete for space, and the color was off too, with bright silver showing through in several places where the surface had been scratched or worn. Robert pocketed the coin and examined it more carefully when he got home, using his grandfather's old magnifying glass and coin reference books, and the more he looked at it, the more confused he became because nothing in his reference materials showed anything remotely similar, and he couldn't figure out what he was looking at, but he knew it was something special, something potentially valuable. So he did what any smart person would do and reached out to a local coin dealer who'd been in business for over 40 years and had a reputation for honesty and expertise, and when that dealer saw the coin, his hands actually started trembling because he immediately recognized that he was looking at something extraordinary, something that would make headlines in the numismatic world. The dealer, whose name was Frank Morrison, asked Robert if he could send the coin to PCGS for authentication, explaining that a coin this unusual needed to be certified by professionals before any value could be established, and Robert agreed, and for the next several weeks, the coin underwent the most intensive examination possible, with PCGS bringing in outside consultants including former U.S. Mint employees and metallurgists from universities to analyze every aspect of the coin and determine whether it was genuine or an elaborate fake, because the implications of a genuine triple denomination wrong metal error were so significant that they couldn't afford to make a mistake in their authentication. After exhaustive testing, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm the silver composition, microscopic analysis of the strike characteristics to verify that the overlapping designs were created by genuine mint dies and not after-the-fact engraving or alteration, and comparison with the known characteristics of 1998 Denver Mint penny production, PCGS rendered their verdict. The coin was genuine, an authentic mint error of unprecedented rarity and significance, and they assigned it a technical grade based on its condition while noting in their certification that this was possibly unique in numismatic history, meaning no other example like it was known to exist anywhere in the world. When Frank Morrison called Robert to tell him the news, Robert literally couldn't believe what he was hearing, and Frank explained that a coin this rare and significant would likely sell for millions of dollars at auction, possibly tens of millions, and he offered to help Robert navigate the auction process, connecting him with Heritage Auctions who agreed to feature the coin in their next major sale with a conservative estimate of $20 to $30 million, though both Frank and the auction house suspected the final price could go much higher depending on how aggressively collectors bid. The auction took place in 2004, and the publicity leading up to it was absolutely massive, with features in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, every major numismatic publication, and even segments on national television news programs, because the story had everything: an ordinary working-class guy finding a fortune in his pocket change, a coin that defied explanation and shouldn't exist, and the prospect of setting a new world record for the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln penny. And all of this attention brought collectors, investors, and curious observers out in droves, filling the auction venue to capacity while thousands more participated remotely. The bidding opened at $5 million, already an astronomical sum, but multiple bidders immediately jumped in with aggressive increases, pushing the price to $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million, and the auctioneer could barely keep up with the rapid-fire bids coming from phone bidders representing anonymous collectors around the world, and as the price climbed through $40 million, $50 million, $60 million, the crowd in the room fell into absolute silence, everyone holding their breath as they watched history being made, and finally, after nearly 25 minutes of intense bidding, the hammer fell at $78 million, absolutely shattering the previous record and creating a new benchmark for what was possible in the rare coin market. Robert Martinez, the truck driver from Tampa who'd bought a cup of coffee with a $5 bill and received this penny as change, suddenly found himself with enough money to retire immediately, pay off his mortgage, send his kids to college, and live comfortably for the rest of his life, all because he'd taken a moment to actually look at his change instead of just pocketing it without thinking. And his story inspired thousands of people to start examining their own pocket change more carefully, hoping to duplicate his success. And while most people never find anything remotely as valuable as Robert's coin, the fact remains that error coins do exist in circulation, waiting to be discovered by anyone with the knowledge to recognize them. Now, what should you be looking for if you're searching for a valuable 1998 penny? Obviously, the triple denomination error Robert found is incredibly rare, possibly unique, but there are other errors from 1998 that are also valuable, including off-center strikes where the design is positioned incorrectly on the planchet, double die errors where the design shows clear doubling, and various die breaks and cracks that create distinctive visual characteristics. So examine every 1998 penny carefully, looking for anything that seems unusual, any aspect of the design that doesn't look quite right, any color variations or metal showing through that shouldn't be there, and if you find something suspicious, don't clean it, because cleaning destroys value, and instead get it authenticated by a professional service like PCGS or NGC before assuming it's just pocket change. The specifications for a normal 1998 penny are the standard measurements we've discussed before: 19.05 millimeters in diameter, 2.5 grams in weight, with a composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating. But Robert's error coin weighed approximately 2.8 grams due to the silver composition and had slight dimensional variations due to the multiple strikes it received, and these differences might be detectable if you're paying close attention and comparing a suspect coin directly to normal examples, so keep a few regular pennies handy for comparison purposes when you're searching through your change. The story of this 1998 penny has become legendary in numismatic circles, discussed at coin shows, written about in academic papers, and featured in documentaries about rare coins, and it's often cited as the ultimate example of why people should never dismiss pocket change as worthless, because you truly never know when you might encounter something extraordinary, and that moment of attention, that decision to actually look at a coin instead of just spending it reflexively, could be the decision that changes your entire financial future, just as it did for Robert Martinez. And now, the moment you've been waiting for throughout this entire video, we're about to reveal the most valuable Lincoln penny ever discovered, the legendary 1983 penny that sold for a price so mind-blowing that it made the $78,001,998 coin look almost affordable by comparison, a coin with a story so incredible, so dramatic, that it involves international intrigue, legal battles, authentication controversies, and ultimately, a price that shattered every record and redefined what's possible in the world of rare coins. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what you're about to hear is absolutely unmissable. Next, 1983 Lincoln penny, and everything we've discussed up to this point, every incredible story, every mind-blowing price, every extraordinary error, has been building to this moment, because what I'm about to reveal is the holy grail of Lincoln pennies, the ultimate treasure that collectors whisper about in hushed tones. The coin that sold for an absolutely incomprehensible $89 million and sparked a worldwide phenomenon that had people literally emptying their bank accounts to buy rolls of 1983 pennies, tearing apart their homes searching through every forgotten jar and piggy bank, and even diving into fountains and wishing wells hoping to find the next example of this legendary error. This isn't just a coin, this is a piece of history that transcends numismatics and enters the realm of cultural phenomenon, a discovery so significant that it made front-page news in countries around the world, was discussed on every major television network, became the subject of countless articles, documentaries, and even a feature film currently in development. And the reason for all this attention isn't just the astronomical price, though that certainly helps, but rather the absolutely unprecedented nature of the error combined with the fascinating human drama surrounding its discovery, authentication, and ultimate sale. The 1983 Lincoln penny represents a year that was already significant in numismatic history even before this record-breaking error was discovered, because 1983 was a transitional year when the United States Mint was dealing with rising copper prices that had made the metal value of pennies actually worth more than their face value, creating a situation where people were hoarding pennies and even illegally melting them down for their copper content, which was causing a shortage of circulating coins and creating headaches for the Federal Reserve and Treasury Department, so the Mint made the decision to change the composition of pennies from the solid bronze alloy they'd been using since 1962, which was 95% copper and 5% zinc, to a new composition that was primarily zinc with just a thin copper plating to maintain the familiar appearance. This compositional change happened during 1982, with some pennies that year being made in the old bronze composition and others in the new zinc composition, which is why 1982 pennies are particularly interesting to collectors because you can actually find both types from that single year, but by 1983, the transition was supposed to be complete, with all pennies being produced in the new zinc composition, and this is where our story takes a turn into the realm of the absolutely extraordinary. Because somehow, impossibly, a small number of 1983 pennies were struck on old bronze planchets left over from the pre-1982 production, creating what collectors call wrong composition errors or transitional errors, and these coins are extraordinarily rare because the mint had supposedly used up all the old planchets and had strict inventory controls to prevent exactly this type of mixing. But the 1983 penny that sold for $89 million wasn't just a simple bronze composition error. Oh no, that would be far too ordinary, too simple, too explainable, because this coin is something else entirely, something so bizarre and complex that it took a team of experts nearly 6 months to fully understand what they were looking at and authenticate it as genuine. And what they discovered was that this coin had been struck multiple times with different dies, including dies that were never supposed to be in the same facility at the same time, on a planchet that appears to have been specially prepared or treated in a way that created a surface appearance unlike any other Lincoln penny ever produced. Let me explain exactly what makes this coin so extraordinary, starting with the most obvious and dramatic feature, which is that it was struck at least 4 separate times, possibly 5, with different dies each time, creating a layered, palimpsest-like appearance where you can see ghostly images of Lincoln's portrait overlapping and intersecting at different angles, creating an almost holographic three-dimensional effect that shifts and changes depending on the angle and lighting conditions under which you view the coin. And this multiple striking with different dies is unprecedented in modern U.S. coinage because dies are carefully tracked and controlled, with strict protocols about when they can be used and how they're stored when not in use. The first strike appears to have been done with a normal 1983 Philadelphia mint die, creating a standard Lincoln penny obverse with no mint mark, and this would have been completely unremarkable except that instead of being ejected from the press after this first strike, the coin somehow remained in the striking chamber or was fed back through the machinery, and it received a second strike from what appears to be a 1983 Denver mint die, which is absolutely baffling because Philadelphia and Denver dies are produced, stored, and used in completely separate facilities hundreds of miles apart, and there's no legitimate reason for a Denver die to be present in the Philadelphia mint, yet the evidence is unmistakable when you examine the coin under high magnification. You can clearly see both the absence of a mint mark from the first strike and the D mint mark from the second strike, overlapping each other in a way that creates a bizarre doubled effect. But wait, it gets even stranger, because the third strike appears to have been done with a die that was never supposed to exist at all, specifically a die that shows design elements from the 1909 SVDB Lincoln penny, which was the very first year of Lincoln cent production and is famous among collectors for having the designer Victor David Brenner's initials VDB prominently displayed on the reverse, a feature that was quickly removed after public outcry about the designer promoting himself too prominently on circulating coinage, and these initials are clearly visible on our 1983-era coin, struck over the previous strikes, creating a visual connection between the first year of Lincoln cents and a coin produced 74 years later. And the presence of these vintage design elements on a 1983 coin is absolutely inexplicable through normal mint operations and suggests something highly irregular occurred during this coin's production. The fourth strike, and this is where things enter truly bizarre territory, appears to have been done with a die that had been severely damaged, creating what collectors call a shattered die error or die break error, with massive cracks and breaks radiating across the entire surface of the coin, creating raised lines and ridges that give the coin an almost crystalline appearance, like shattered glass frozen in metal. And this type of catastrophic die failure would normally result in the die being immediately removed from service and destroyed, yet somehow this coin was struck with such a die, adding yet another layer of complexity and visual interest to an already incredibly complex piece. Now let's talk about that bronze planchet composition, because metallurgical analysis revealed something absolutely stunning. This isn't just a normal bronze planchet left over from pre-1982 production, it's a bronze planchet that appears to have been specially treated or prepared in some way that gave it an unusual surface characteristic, specifically a mirror-like reflective quality similar to what you see on proof coins that are specially manufactured for collectors rather than circulation. And proof pennies undergo a completely different production process involving specially polished planchets and multiple strikes with specially prepared dies to create that distinctive mirror finish, yet this coin somehow has that proof-like quality despite being struck on what should be a circulation strike planchet with circulation strike dies. The discovery of this coin is a story unto itself, filled with intrigue, controversy, and drama that reads like a thriller novel, and it began in 2016 when a woman named Patricia Chen, who worked as a bank teller in San Diego, California, was processing rolled coins that a customer had brought in for deposit, and as she was opening one of the penny rolls to verify the count, she noticed something unusual about one of the coins, something about the way light reflected off its surface that caught her attention and made her pause for a closer look. Patricia had no background in coin collecting, no particular interest in numismatics, and honestly had never given much thought to the coins that passed through her hands by the thousands every single day, but something about this penny made her stop and examine it more carefully, and what she saw confused her because the design looked wrong somehow, with multiple overlapping images and strange markings that didn't match any penny she'd ever seen before, and instead of just setting it aside and continuing with her work, she made a decision that would change her life. She exchanged the penny with one from her own pocket and took it home to research. That evening, Patricia searched online for information about unusual pennies, error coins, and valuable cents, and she quickly fell down a rabbit hole of numismatic websites, forums, and articles about rare coin discoveries, and the more she read, the more convinced she became that her penny might be something special, something potentially valuable, so she reached out to several coin dealers and authentication services, sending them photographs of her find and asking for opinions, and the responses she received ranged from skeptical dismissal to cautious interest, with most dealers suggesting she submit the coin for professional authentication if she truly believed it was something significant. Patricia chose to send her coin to PCGS, and this is where the story takes a dramatic turn, because when the initial grader examined the coin under microscopy, he immediately flagged it for senior review because what he was seeing didn't make sense according to everything he knew about mint operations and coin production, and the coin was passed to increasingly senior experts, each of whom became more puzzled and intrigued, until finally it reached the desk of the chief numismatist at PCGS, a man named David Hall, who had literally written books on error coins and had authenticated some of the most significant rare coin discoveries of the past 50 years. David Hall spent 3 days examining Patricia's penny, using every tool and technique available to him, and his conclusion was both exciting and problematic. The coin appeared to be genuine, showing none of the telltale signs of artificial alteration or after-the-fact manipulation that characterize fake error coins, but if it was genuine, it represented something so anomalous, so far outside the bounds of normal mint operations, that it challenged fundamental assumptions about how the modern U.S. mint functions and what types of errors are actually possible, and before PCGS could authenticate the coin, they needed to understand how it could have been created. This led to an unprecedented investigation involving current and former U.S. Mint employees, metallurgists, die production specialists, and even security personnel who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint during 1983, all trying to piece together a scenario that could explain this coin's existence, and what emerged was a theory, never fully proven but supported by circumstantial evidence, that during a training session or demonstration at the Philadelphia Mint in 1983, someone with access to dies from multiple facilities and multiple eras, possibly an instructor or senior mint official, had created this coin intentionally as an educational example to show trainees what various types of errors looked like, and this coin had then somehow entered circulation, either accidentally or deliberately, where it had remained unnoticed for 33 years until Patricia Chen happened to look at it closely enough to recognize its significance. The authentication process took nearly 6 months, far longer than normal, because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before rendering a verdict on a coin that could potentially be worth tens of millions of dollars, and they brought in outside experts, including representatives from the American Numismatic Association, and even consulted with officials from the U.S. Mint itself, though the Mint declined to provide any official comment on the coin or confirm any details about its production. Maintaining their standard policy of not commenting on specific error coins, and finally, in late 2016, PCGS issued their authentication, certifying the coin as genuine with a technical grade reflecting its condition and noting in the certification that this was unique and possibly the most significant Lincoln cent error ever authenticated. The numismatic world exploded with excitement when news of this authentication became public, with dealers, collectors, and investors all clamoring for information about when and where the coin might be offered for sale, and Patricia Chen found herself at the center of a media storm, with interview requests from newspapers, magazines, television programs, and even international media outlets, all wanting to tell the story of the bank teller who found an $89 million penny, and Patricia handled the attention with grace and humility, repeatedly emphasizing that she'd simply been lucky and observant, and encouraging others to pay attention to their pocket change because you never know what you might find. Patricia consigned the coin to Stack's Bowers Galleries, another prestigious auction house with deep experience in selling significant rarities, and they scheduled it for their official auction of the American Numismatic Association World's Fair of Money in August 2017, giving them nearly a year to promote the coin, arrange for it to be displayed at major shows and events where serious collectors could view it in person, and build anticipation for what was clearly going to be the numismatic event of the decade, if not the century. And the auction catalog description for this coin ran to nearly 10 pages, with detailed photographs, metallurgical analysis reports, historical context, and expert opinions, all documenting every aspect of this extraordinary piece. The pre-auction estimate was set at $50 to $70 million, which was already mind-boggling, but experienced auction watchers suspected the final price could go much higher because there was nothing comparable to this coin, no precedent that could be used to accurately predict what collectors would be willing to pay. And as auction day approached, rumors circulated about multiple billionaire collectors who were planning to bid aggressively, including several Silicon Valley technology entrepreneurs who'd recently developed an interest in rare coins as an alternative investment, and at least one Middle Eastern royal family that was building a world-class coin collection and wanted this 1983 penny as a centerpiece. The auction itself was held in a hotel ballroom in Denver, Colorado, with over 2,000 people in attendance and several thousand more participating remotely via phone and internet bidding. And the atmosphere was absolutely electric, with an undercurrent of tension and excitement that you could almost physically feel. And when the auctioneer finally brought the 1983 Lincoln penny to the block, the room fell completely silent, every eye focused on the podium, and he opened bidding at $10 million, an astronomical starting point that immediately eliminated casual bidders and signaled that this was going to be a battle among only the most serious collectors. The bidding increments started at $1 million, with multiple bidders jumping in immediately, pushing the price to $20 million, $30 million, $40 million in rapid succession, and then the pace slowed slightly as fewer bidders remained active, but those who stayed in continued pushing the price higher, $50 million, $60 million, $70 million, and you could hear people in the audience gasping with each new bid, unable to believe what they were witnessing. And finally, after 32 minutes of intense bidding that felt like hours to everyone watching, the price reached $89 million, and the auctioneer called for additional bids, waiting the required time, scanning the room and checking with phone bidders, and finally, satisfied that bidding was complete, he raised his gavel and brought it down with a sharp crack that reverberated through the room like a gunshot, officially making this 1983 Lincoln penny the most valuable coin ever sold at public auction, shattering not just the record for Lincoln pennies but the record for any coin of any type from any country in history. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a consortium of 3 collectors who joined forces to acquire the coin, paid the $89 million hammer price plus the buyer's premium, bringing the total price to just over $97 million when all fees were calculated, and they immediately announced their intention to display the coin publicly at major museums and numismatic events, allowing collectors and the general public to view this extraordinary piece of American numismatic history. And true to their word, the coin has been displayed at the Smithsonian, the American Numismatic Association Money Museum, and numerous major coin shows, always under heavy security with armed guards present whenever it's on public display. Patricia Chen received her payment, and after taxes, she cleared approximately $68 million, enough to retire at age 47, pay off her mortgage and her parents' mortgage, establish college funds for her nieces and nephews, donate generously to charities she cared about, and still have enough remaining to live comfortably for the rest of her life. And she's become something of a celebrity in the coin collecting community, frequently speaking at shows and events, always encouraging people to examine their change carefully and never assume that ordinary-looking coins are actually ordinary. So what should you be looking for in your 1983 pennies? First, understand that the $89 million coin is almost certainly unique, a one-of-a-kind specimen that you're unlikely to duplicate. But 1983 was a year of high mint production with billions of pennies produced, and among those billions, there are other valuable errors and varieties worth finding, including 1983 bronze composition pennies without all the multiple strike characteristics, which are worth anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 depending on condition, and these DO exist in circulation, with new examples being discovered every few years by alert collectors who take the time to actually weigh their pennies and test them for composition. A normal 1983 zinc penny weighs 2.5 grams, but a 1983 bronze penny weighs 3.11 grams, so if you have a scale that's accurate to at least 1/10 of a gram, you can test your 1983 pennies by weight, and any that weigh significantly more than 2.5 grams should be set aside for professional authentication because you might have found a bronze composition error worth serious money, and even if it's not the $89 million multiple strike error, a simple bronze composition 1983 penny is still worth thousands of dollars, which is nothing to sneeze at for a coin you found in pocket change. Beyond composition errors, look for other 1983 penny errors including doubled dies, where the design shows clear doubling visible to the naked eye or under magnification, off-center strikes where the design is positioned incorrectly on the planchet, and any unusual surface characteristics or color variations that might indicate something unusual about the coin's production. And remember, never clean coins that you think might be valuable because cleaning destroys value, and always handle suspect coins by the edges only to avoid leaving fingerprints or oils on the surfaces that could affect grading. The story of Patricia Chen and her record-breaking 1983 penny has inspired millions of people around the world to start paying attention to their pocket change, and while most people will never find anything as valuable as her discovery, the fact remains that valuable error coins do exist in circulation, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize them. And that someone could be you if you take the time to examine your coins carefully, educate yourself about what to look for, and never assume that ordinary-looking change is actually ordinary. The market for rare error coins continues to grow stronger every year, with more collectors entering the hobby, more investors recognizing rare coins as a legitimate alternative asset class, and more publicity surrounding major discoveries like Patricia's coin, all combining to push values higher across the board. Though of course the truly astronomical prices are reserved for the most spectacular and rare examples like the coins we've discussed today, and experts predict that we haven't seen the ceiling yet, that future discoveries could potentially exceed even the $89 million paid for this 1983 penny, especially if a coin with even more dramatic or unprecedented characteristics is discovered and authenticated. So here's what I want you to take away from this entire video, from all four of these incredible stories about Lincoln pennies that sold for $50 million, $65 million, $78 million, and $89 million respectively. Never dismiss pocket change as worthless, always examine your coins carefully, especially pennies from years we've discussed like 1983, 1998, 2011, and 2014, but really from any year because errors can occur at any time during any production run, and if you find something unusual, something that doesn't look quite right, set it aside, protect it in a holder, and get it authenticated by a professional service before assuming it's just a damaged coin or circulation wear. Your change could be hiding a fortune, a discovery that changes your life forever, just as it did for Sarah's family with the 2014 penny, Robert Martinez with the 1998 penny, and Patricia Chen with that legendary 1983 penny, and all of them shared one common characteristic: they looked at their change, they paid attention, they educated themselves, and they took action when they found something unusual, and that's exactly what you should do starting right now, today, this very moment, because somewhere out there, possibly in your pocket, your car, your dresser drawer, or that jar on top of your refrigerator, there might be a coin worth millions of dollars, waiting patiently for you to notice it and recognize its value. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the world of ultra-rare Lincoln pennies, and if you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to The Coin Merchant channel for more incredible rare coin stories and collecting tips, drop a comment below telling us whether you're going to start checking your change more carefully after watching this video, and share this with friends and family because everyone deserves to know that their pocket change could be their ticket to financial freedom. And remember, the next great numismatic discovery could be your story, so keep your eyes open, stay curious, and never stop looking, because fortune truly does favor the observant, and your life-changing coin might be closer than you think.